Expelliarmus. It's supposed to be nothing more than a simple disarming charm, the kind of spell every student at Hogwarts learns in their first years. But if you look closely across the 7 Harry Potter books, you'll see it doesn't always behave the same way.
Expelliarmus!
In one duel, it acts with the force of a blasting curse. In another, it collides with dark magic in a way that shouldn't even be possible. And somehow, this so-called basic spell ends up deciding the outcome of the entire Wizarding War. This video will cover every time Expelliarmus behaved differently, and why a charm most readers overlook turned out to be the most unpredictable and powerful spell of them all. Snape vs. Lockhart at the Dueling Club. The first real demonstration of Expelliarmus comes in Chamber of Secrets, when Professor Lockhart hosts a dueling club to show students how to defend themselves. Lockhart, full of his usual arrogance, pairs himself with Professor Snape for the opening match. The students expect a display of dazzling spellwork, perhaps flashy hexes or clever counter-curses. What they get instead is one of the simplest spells in the book, Expelliarmus. Snape doesn't make a show of it. He doesn't boast or build tension. He simply raises his wand, speaks the incantation, and instantly knocks Lockhart's wand into the air. But it doesn't stop there. The force of the spell sends Lockhart flying across the room, flat on his back. This is a crucial moment. Expelliarmus doesn't just remove an opponent's weapon. Here, it behaves almost like a concussive blast, powerful enough to incapacitate. Most of the students laugh at Lockhart's humiliation, but Rowling is doing something far more subtle. In a single stroke, she establishes that this is not just a student spell. It's fast, efficient, and decisive. Lockhart, for all his supposed experience, is defeated instantly. Snape's choice of Expelliarmus demonstrates that a wizard who understands timing and precision can win a duel without resorting to dangerous or showy magic. This is the very first clue that Expelliarmus will grow into something more important than anyone realizes. It isn't just about taking away a wand, it's about ending fights cleanly. And later, that quality is what makes it Harry Potter's most defining spell. The Shrieking Shack and Snape's knockout. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Expelliarmus behaves in a way that completely changes how readers view it. Inside the Shrieking Shack, tensions rise as Harry, Ron, and Hermione confront Sirius Black. Professor Snape bursts in, determined to capture Sirius himself. He raises his wand, certain of victory. But Harry, Ron, and Hermione act together. They all shout Expelliarmus at once, their wands firing in unison. What happens next is nothing like the clean wand snatch seen in the Dueling Club. The combined force of 3 disarming charms slams into Snape, hurling him backward into the wall. He collapses to the ground unconscious. Instead of merely losing his wand, Snape is completely incapacitated. Expelliarmus, under the right conditions, has the stopping power of a knockout spell. This moment reveals 2 subtle truths about how magic works in Rowling's world. First, spells are not fixed in strength. Their impact scales with the caster's intent and with the number of wands behind them. Second, Expelliarmus can function as far more than a disarming tool. In this scene, it is indistinguishable from a stunner, but with more brute force. The detail is easy to overlook because the drama of the Shrieking Shack takes center stage. But tucked into that chaos is an early sign that Expelliarmus adapts to the situation. A single disarm might end a duel neatly, but multiple voices shouting it in anger can flatten a grown wizard. This versatility is what makes the spell unpredictable, and why it keeps reappearing in moments where survival depends on more than just knocking away a wand. The Graveyard Duel and Priori Incantatem. In Goblet of Fire, Expelliarmus takes on a role unlike anything seen before. Harry is trapped in the graveyard at Little Hangleton, surrounded by Death Eaters, facing Voldemort reborn. The Dark Lord forces Harry into a duel, mocking him as a boy armed with schoolyard magic. Voldemort casts Avada Kedavra, fully expecting the duel to end instantly. Harry responds with instinct, not strategy. He casts Expelliarmus. What follows is one of the most extraordinary magical events in the series. Instead of Expelliarmus being brushed aside, the 2 spells collide. Golden light connects Harry's wand with Voldemort's, locking them together in a rare phenomenon called Priori Incantatem. The crowd of Death Eaters can only watch as ghostly echoes of Voldemort's victims spill out of his wand. Cedric Diggory, Frank Bryce, Bertha Jorkins, and even Harry's parents. They circle Voldemort, shielding Harry long enough for him to escape. Here, Expelliarmus doesn't behave like a disarming spell at all. It becomes the trigger for a once-in-a-lifetime magical effect, something that shouldn't even be possible from such a simple charm. It doesn't knock Voldemort's wand away. It doesn't end the fight in the traditional sense. Instead, it meets one of the most feared curses in existence head-on and holds its ground. This is a critical turning point for how readers understand the spell. Against Voldemort, Harry doesn't need a killing curse of his own. Expelliarmus, cast with determination, is enough to unlock ancient magic that saves his life. It's no longer just a defensive tactic, it becomes a symbol of resistance, capable of standing against the darkest spell ever created. The Department of Mysteries and straightforward duels. By the time of Order of the Phoenix, Harry and his friends are fighting in real battles, not just classroom duels. In the Department of Mysteries, surrounded by Death Eaters, Expelliarmus is used repeatedly, but here it behaves in its most straightforward way. The charm works exactly as it was designed. It knocks wands out of hands and ends duels in an instant. During the chaos, Harry relies on Expelliarmus to keep opponents at bay without resorting to darker or more dangerous magic. There are no explosive blasts or rare magical effects this time. Instead, the spell functions cleanly, snatching away weapons and forcing opponents out of the fight. It's efficient and practical, the very definition of a defensive spell. What makes this worth noting is the contrast with earlier moments. At the dueling club, Expelliarmus had the force of a blasting curse. In the Shrieking Shack, it knocked a professor unconscious. In the graveyard, it collided with Avada Kedavra and produced Priori Incantatem. But in the Ministry battle, it strips away all of that unpredictability. It behaves simply, exactly as it's written in spellbooks. This consistency matters. Rowling shows that Expelliarmus isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it just does the job. And in the middle of a large-scale fight, that reliability is what makes it so useful. When spells are flying in every direction, being able to end a duel instantly, without killing, is what keeps Harry and his friends alive. It is a reminder that while the spell can behave unpredictably, its true strength is that it can be trusted to work exactly as intended when the stakes are highest. The Battle of the Seven Potters and Harry's giveaway. In Deathly Hallows, Expelliarmus behaves in a way that is less about magic itself and more about identity. During the Battle of the Seven Potters, when Harry is fleeing Privet Drive disguised among 6 decoys, he comes face to face with Stan Shunpike. Stan has clearly been placed under the Imperius Curse and is attacking against his will. Instead of firing a curse that could seriously injure or kill him, Harry reacts on instinct and uses Expelliarmus. The spell works as intended. It disarms Stan without causing lasting harm. But the choice has an unintended consequence. Lupin later scolds Harry, pointing out that by using Expelliarmus in such a deadly situation, he gave himself away. None of the other fighters would have chosen a non-lethal Disarming Charm in the middle of a high-stakes battle with Death Eaters. The enemy immediately recognized the move as Harry's signature. This marks a new kind of behavior for the spell. It's no longer just about what Expelliarmus does in terms of magical effect, but what it reveals about the caster. At this moment, it identifies Harry. The charm becomes a trademark, a telltale sign that sets him apart from every other wizard on the battlefield. What makes this variation subtle is that it's not the mechanics of the magic that change, but its consequences. Expelliarmus behaves differently here because it functions as a marker of identity. It shows that even in the deadliest of battles, Harry will not abandon the spell that defines who he is. And that unwavering choice is what sets him apart from Voldemort. The final duel and Voldemort's defeat. The most dramatic instance of Expelliarmus behaving differently occurs in the Great Hall at the climax of Deathly Hallows. Harry steps forward to face Voldemort surrounded by survivors and Death Eaters alike. Voldemort, wielding the Elder Wand, casts Avada Kedavra with complete confidence. Harry responds not with a killing curse of his own, nor with a stunning spell, but with Expelliarmus, the same charm he has relied on since his earliest duels. This time, the interaction between the spells is not like the Graveyard Priori Incantatem. Instead, the Elder Wand refuses to kill its true master. Harry's Expelliarmus collides with Voldemort's curse, and the result is final. The Elder Wand flies into Harry's hand, while Voldemort's own killing curse rebounds and strikes him dead. Expelliarmus does not just disarm here, it determines the outcome of the entire war. What makes this different from every previous use is that it combines magical mechanics with narrative symbolism. On one level, the wand's allegiance ensures Voldemort cannot win. On another, Harry's refusal to kill and his reliance on Expelliarmus prove stronger than Voldemort's obsession with death and domination. The charm doesn't merely end a duel, it brings down the darkest wizard in history. This final scene ties together every unusual behavior of Expelliarmus seen before. The blasting force at the dueling club, the knockout blow in the Shrieking Shack, the miraculous Priori Incantatem in the graveyard, the failures, the giveaways, the reliable duel enders, all of it builds toward this moment. Expelliarmus behaves not just as a defensive spell, but as the defining force of the series, the spell that ends Voldemort once and for all. But Expelliarmus wasn't the only spell that refused to act the same way twice. If you thought a Disarming Charm behaving unpredictably was surprising, wait until you see how Avada Kedavra, the deadliest curse in the wizarding world, sometimes bent its own rules. Click here for every time Avada Kedavra behaved differently.